Okay, one thing about this that I think is fun about this class is that often it talks about give students a reason to learn what you're learning and connect it to life. Well, if you're going to be a teacher, then obviously learning stuff from educational psychology that will help you be a more effective teacher is already enough to make this stuff worthwhile. But my job is to kind of help demonstrate this stuff so you see it going on. Got you, Matthew. And got you, Cherish. And so I'm supposed to demonstrate this stuff so you can see it happening and then help you talk about it too to make sure you understand it. And if you recall, the other day I was talking about learning styles and that you covered that somewhere. You talked about students' different learning styles. And I saw a bunch of heads going, yes. Is that right? You've all had a class where you've talked about different learning styles that kids have?
Yeah.
Okay, think about your preferred way of learning. Is your preferred way of learning auditory or visual? Of those two, which would you rather do? Would you rather hear it or would you rather see it and read it?
See it. Hear it.
Hear?
See it.
See it?
See it.
See it?
See it.
See it?
Hear it.
Hear it?
See it.
Hear it?
See it.
See it? Hear it?
See it.
See it?
See it.
See it?
Probably hear it. If it's not a captivating lecture, then I would prefer see it, because then I'm not gonna waste my time on trying to do this.
Okay, so you say, wow, I've got half and half in here. So that means we better do both, present stuff in both the hearing and the seeing mode. But you understand, if you have your own personal preference, you tend to, if you're not intentional about it, using the word that the book uses, if you're not intentional about it, you're apt to just revert back to do what fits you most and then wonder why some of the kids get it and some of them don't. And the ones who get it are the ones who have your preferred learning styles, and the ones who don't are the ones who miss it and wish you would do something different. That's where a teacher has to learn to do a whole bunch of things and not just what fits them personally in their own personality. And then besides auditory and visual, what are the other kind of learners some of you have studied about? Kinesthetic. What is that all about?
That means I have to touch it and do
Yeah,
it.
that's it. It's like, so that means I have to be touching this stuff. I need hands-on kinds of things. Which means when I'm explaining something to everybody, and if I have a highly kinesthetic child and he says, I just don't get it, even if I'm demonstrating with blocks, I put the blocks in front of him and let him do the stuff. Even bring him up here and let him do it for everybody else to see it. And then it's kind of cool because then he gets to do it for everybody. Everybody gets to watch him do it. He has the fun of helping me teach the lesson, but he doesn't even know that by having him touch it, he's grasping it better than he would otherwise. And he might even say, hey, I like helping you teach. I learn it better when I help you teach it, because he doesn't even know what style he is and what's going on. The other thing I talked about was multiple intelligence. And I didn't see anybody shaking their head yes on that one. So I went to the internet, good old Google, and I got you something on multiple intelligence.
There's a really good book about it. It's called The 8 Smarts.
Mm-hmm.
And Carissa took a quiz the other day, and she sent me the link for it, so I want to take the quiz and see what I am too. It'll be really fun. Let's figure it out.
And even though on the back is some stuff that tells you where this came from, and I think what's interesting about this handout is if you look at the back of the handout, it says updated 2007. That's 11 years ago. They haven't updated this website since then. And there might be a tendency to say, wow, something that hasn't been updated since then must not have much to offer. I have looked at tons of stuff that present multiple intelligences, Howard Gardner's theory, and I haven't found anything out there that compares to this handout. So I use it every time I talk about it, because let's just look at it for those of you who are visual learners and say, let's see. In fact, I heard somebody make the comment, I'll have to go on there and see what kind of learner I am or what kind of intelligence I have. Well, so there it is, bodily kinesthetic. That's the label. The ability to use one's physical body well. See, lots of sources will give you that, but the examples that this guy puts in his little handout here, that's what's so helpful. So, do you have a lot of bodily kinesthetic intelligence? Are you a dancer, an athlete, a surgeon, a craftsman? I'm not a surgeon, I'm not a dancer, but I'm pretty good at athletics. So I have a selective kind of bodily kinesthetic intelligence. I think probably most of us, when we talk about it, we say, I'm pretty well coordinated. I go speak at a camp somewhere, we go out to play volleyball, and all the young people going, oh, look at the old man out here on the volleyball court. And then I'm on the front row, and someone sets it up, and I do some metacognition. I go, okay, Tom, you can just pop it over and let someone hit it back, or you can jump up in the air and twist and spike it, and your side will get a point, and you'll throw your back out. Probably. So which do I do? Just pop it over and let him hit it back? Or do I go for the point? I go for the point. I'm just not, I've got some intelligence, but I'm not that smart. And then I pay for it dearly, because my back's out and I'm going to be out of commission for a while. But then, the next time I speak, some of the kids are paying attention now because they're, wow, did you see him spike that volleyball? Unless it hits a girl in the face, and then everybody thinks I'm it. Like I didn't do it on purpose. She just happened to be standing there on the other side of the net. Interpersonal intelligence, do you have a lot of that? Now see, I'm a shy, bashful, quiet person. Okay? When I came to school here and they called my name in class to take attendance, I would go here and my ears would turn bright red because I was embarrassed. I was.
You hide your shy bashful self quite well.
If you're going to be a teacher, you can't carry that into the classroom. You leave that at the door because you have a job to do. So you come in the classroom and do the job. And my wife thinks it's funny that everybody thinks I'm a very outgoing person. And she just has to pry information out of me. And she goes, I guess it's because you use all your words up at school. You don't have any left when you come home. I said, there you go. I can just be myself around here. But I was a salesman one time and very good at it. Oh, and I'm also a teacher. So apparently, even though my personality doesn't necessarily fit those two occupations, I did them, and I did them well. At least that's what I was told. So I must have a pretty good degree of interpersonal intelligence. But the ability to sense what other people are feeling, oh, wait a minute. I just don't get it. I don't often tune in to what other people are feeling. So if that's the definition of interpersonal intelligence, then I don't have much of interpersonal intelligence. Yeah, but it says teachers and salespeople. Okay, now watch this. A lot of salespeople and teachers have that, but not every salesperson or teacher has it. Because do you pick up on how people are feeling and what they're thinking? I don't. I just don't. I just don't notice. It's like, how could you not? I don't know. I'm real low in that area. Even though it might sound like I have some of that. Intrapersonal, people who have good insight into themselves and make effective use of their own intelligence, self-awareness, the ability to know your own body and mind. I get a whole bunch of points in that box because I'm my best friend. You know what I like about carrying on a conversation with myself? I understand exactly what the person's saying, and they agree with me most of the time. It's such a beautiful conversation. You try to converse with other people, and they just misunderstand you. You know what I'm talking about? So I'm pretty low in interpersonal, but high in terms of thinking about what's going on inside, and enjoy solitude a lot. I don't need to have a lot of people around to be a happy camper. Linguistic, you have an ability with words. I can make, it says poet, see, I can make things rhyme. Yeah, but you're not linguistic, Tom. You don't have a high ability with words. Logical, mathematical, bing. I found one that I really get a lot of points on. And by the way, if I get a lot of points on logical, mathematical, then it doesn't matter if I get 0 on musical. You know how I know that I get a 0 on musical? I like to sing. So I taught my children to sing. When they went to school and joined choir, the choir teacher just couldn't believe how they just naturally sang off key so easily. And I said, my fault. We sing in the car when we travel and go places, and I just make a joyful noise unto the Lord. And another thing that lets me know that I had 0 in that area, even, and this is funny, I really appreciate music and I enjoy music, I just don't have any musical talent. One time, the music director here at Calvary wanted the faculty to sing in chapel. And he had us come to practice, and I didn't go. And he sent me a message. He said, Tom, we want to see you we want you to sing with everybody else. And I said, no, you don't. He said, yes, I do. I want everybody there. So I showed up at the next practice. And after practice, he walked up to me and said, you don't have to come back if you don't want to. I said, thank you very much. See, I already knew what he had to discover. He just thought everybody had enough musical whatever to sing in a combined choir. Not a good idea to put me in there. Just have me, if I'm in a men's retreat where all the men are going to stand up and sing when they get back to church, I sing very softly and just mouth the words, because I know if I project the sound, it will not match everybody else's. And what's sad is I don't even know it doesn't match. All I hear is what's inside my head, and it sounds okay to me. That's tragic. But you know why I'm not bothered to have 0 on musical? Because what I lost in the music department, I picked up in the mathematics department. And sometimes I think when God gives us like if you look down this list and say, I don't see anything on here that I have a whole bunch of, it's like, well, I have a whole bunch of mathematical stuff. And so God says, I think this is kind of what he says, to keep him from being too proud about it, I will give him another area where he has 0. And it's just a good thing to deal with. Naturalistic, you understand nature, the patterns of nature, and you're into classifying things in nature. I don't have much of that, because did any of you have to do insect collection where you had to classify the bugs that you collected? Did you enjoy that? I don't know how you could enjoy that. Okay, but see, that's because and what you say is, because you're not naturalistically as smart as I am. That's your response. You just come back and say, the reason I enjoyed it is I have a lot of this. At least I have more than this than you do. And that's just the way it is in life. We all have areas where we're stronger than others, where we're weaker than others in some regard. And this is a pretty, and I might as well add this one here. This mathematical stuff, I'm just naturally mathematical. And so I made straight A's in math all through school. I go off to college, and I take calculus 1. I take college algebra, and let's see, college algebra, and what's the second one you take?
Geometry.
There's college when I went to college, it was college algebra, and then it was something else. Then you took calculus 1, calculus 2, and calculus 3.
That's right.
And I just loved calculus 1 and calculus 2 and calculus 3. So where do we go from here? And then we get on up to differential equations. And I'm going, ooh. Oh no. I'm climbing up the mathematical ladder, and I reached the ceiling in terms of my mathematical intelligence. I'm never going to become a great mathematician who discovers some new mathematical phenomena and shares it with the rest of the world. My mathematical abilities don't go that far. You follow me? What do you think happened when I discovered that? You like to paint? Okay, what?
You understood how the rest of us feel.
That's exactly what happened. When I didn't at the time, but when I became a teacher and I see students hit that ceiling, I go, I know how it feels. I just hit a different ceiling. And then I realized that was to my benefit as a teacher. In other words, by God limiting my mathematical ability, He did me a favor as a teacher. If I would have been able to see everything clearly, no matter what math I studied, I wouldn't have understood what it meant for someone to say, I don't get it. I just don't see it. It's beyond my mathematical abilities. And I just think that it's healthy for a person to learn that. Maybe you're very musical, so you want to be a famous singer and write music, and you say, you know, I've got some musical intelligence, but it doesn't go quite that far. Spatial intelligence,
Yeah, I got none of that.
the ability to know where you are relative to fixed locations. My wife is amazed when we go someplace with what is that called? We go on, is it MapQuest? That thing, we go on the internet and I click on it and it tells me how to get to where my grandson's playing baseball. And I go there and I look around the surroundings, and then the next time I have to go there, I know exactly where to go. To the Legion Field in Warrensburg. Oh, it's right there by the car dealership. You make a right turn and you drive down this road, country road, and make a left turn, and the next thing you know, you're across the bridge and at the baseball field. Now, see, is that spatial intelligence on my part, or is that because I grew up on a farm where I oriented a lot of where I go and what I do with geography rather than road signs? So I don't know which it is. But a whole bunch of different people have a lot of that. But you could have, can you see where you could have some of that and not be any of these people? And you could be one of these people and not necessarily have that. And that might be why some people don't put these examples on here, because then people could start to think, well, you can't be one of these if you don't have this stuff. And that's just not necessarily true. Okay, any questions about this? Does this help understanding the Gardner's 8 kinds of intelligence? Does it help you kind of figure out where you fit in? What you have going for you? Oh. Was this helpful? Yes. Oh, some of you still have your cards from the other day. All right. Yes, it was. Very good. keep that handy. I want to use it a few more times today. And I didn't tell you to bring them back, so I made some new ones that are messy. They're not near as classy as the others, but hey, I just thought, oh no, I let you keep those. Now I have to make some more, so I made them here at school with the marker I had down the hall, and it doesn't look near as pretty as the ones I made home. Those little blue markers. Page 101, operant conditioning, where it focuses on behavior and consequences. Behavior and consequences. So what are the consequences of you holding up these little cards?
You know what we're thinking.
I know what you're thinking. And that's a pleasant experience for me. That I know all of you said, yes, this handout was helpful. Just like that. Was that a pleasant experience for you to hold this up? Yes or no? All right. I mean, there's always the possibility that says, no, I think this is too infantile. But I think sometimes stuff we do with little kids works with adults too. And so we'll just keep doing it for a while. And primarily for the purpose of helping you see what it's like to be on the receiving side of, as a teacher, doing this kind of thing to help kids participate and get immediate feedback from a whole bunch of people. So far, we're having a pleasant experience in here. On page 101, it says, perhaps the most important principle of behavioral learning theory is that behavior changes according to the immediate consequences. The more immediate the consequence, the greater impact it has on the student's behavior. So, if I ask a question, then I have you pick up the card, see what's happening. I'm getting an immediate consequence to my question, and it strengthens your, what does it strengthen? Your paying attention that the books talk about. And for some reason, I just don't like that word, paying attention. It sounds like I'm losing something. But it seems to magnify or increase or reinforce the intensity of attention in a classroom. Reinforcers: candy, praise, food, security, warmth. Secondary reinforcers: money, grades, smiles, hugs, attention, tokens, points, toys, games, stars. I forgot to add one. Stickers. Wouldn't the stickers be on there?
Yes.
Those are, and by the way, I think stickers are cool personally. You find these stickers with these cute little faces on them. You can put them on things, and different stickers mean certain things. And little kids seem to like them too. Sometimes even adults like them.
That's true.
Negative reinforcers. A negative reinforcer? I mean, I see positive reinforcers, but what's a negative reinforcer? Escaping an unpleasant situation. So anytime you're allowing a student to escape an unpleasant situation, you're using a negative reinforcer. If you get your homework done in class, no, if you get your work done in class, you won't have homework in math. You see what's going on? I'll get this done so I don't have to take it home. Now, someone might say, well, no, making them take work home would be punishment for not getting it done in class. So sometimes it might be how you're trying to do this. But basically, a negative reinforcer is letting a student escape an unpleasant situation or avoid an unpleasant situation. I want everybody to give me a word that ends in AR?
Stellar.
What?
Stellar.
Stellar,
Star.
star, car,
Radar.
radar,
Spectacular.
spectacular.
Good job.
Now, see, somebody going, that's it. And if you can't think of one right away, because sometimes, is this true in the classroom? Sometimes you're so busy listening what other people say, you're having trouble thinking up something on your own. And so it's like, okay, now see, just the fact that I said that, I said, so if you're having trouble thinking of something, just put AR on your little card or on a piece of paper, and then as things come to mind, write them down. And maybe you could write these down and bring them to me tomorrow. And you follow what I'm doing? I'm reinforcing you doing this exercise by taking away a painful consequence. That would be, he's going to call on me by name, and I haven't thought of something yet. And I especially have to be careful of this, because one thing on this intelligence thing, I don't know where it fits here, but I think very quickly. My mind just moves like lightning. You go, how do you know that? My wife asked me a question, and I give her an answer just like that. And earlier in our marriage, she would say, Tom, sometimes I wish you would think about things before you answer. I said, what? She goes, I wish you would think about things before you answer. I said, Nina, I couldn't open my mouth and say something if I hadn't thought about it first. She said, but you answered so quickly. You didn't have time to think about it.
Some of us just process instantly. My fiance and I are like that, and I'm the one that answers really quickly, and he takes like 3 minutes to think before he talks. It drives me crazy.
And that's right, see? And it's just personality things, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, so knowing that and wanting to be perceived as a thoughtful person, Nina asked me a question. And so then I sit there so long I forget what the question was, because my mind took off someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm easily distractible. And it's like, whoa. And I think, what was that you asked again? She goes, see, sometimes you don't even pay attention. And I'm going, and that's true. Now, it wasn't that time. Since sometimes that's true, I say, that's right. Sometimes I don't. That's why I'm saying, would you ask me again? And then when she asked me the second time, it's okay if I answer right away because she asked the question earlier. So because my mind works like that, you understand that I can be in the classroom just clicking through material and going bang, bang, bang with questions, and all of a sudden I've got people in the room who are feeling intimidated and overwhelmed, and I don't even know it because they don't tell me. Because they don't want to tell me, because they're not thinking as fast as I am. And see, if you don't study this psychology stuff and learn this, then you think, well, everybody can think as fast as I can. And no, they can't. And the other side of it is, if you think more slowly, then you'll have kids in the classroom who, while you're asking the question, you'll have some of these little chippers who they'll finish your question and give you the answer before you finish the question. And it's like, how do they know this? Well, they were looking at the book and they figured all this stuff out. That's just the way they are. And here's what I say. I like to say it's, that's the way God wired them. That's the way God wired you. That's the way God wired me. He's the one that put us together like this. And when you get married, he gives you a helpmate that's suitable for you. And I've told people, I don't know how many times I've said this, that my effectiveness as a teacher has been immensely enhanced by the wife that I have at home, who talks with me about stuff, because she was a teacher too. So we discuss a lot of things, and I get a lot of good pointers from her in regards to how to be careful about doing this the right way. And while we're talking about reinforcers, strengthen a behavior, punishments weaken a behavior. And we'll talk about those later on. Page 102. What did he talk about on page 102? The Premack principle? Did your grandma ever say to you, eat your vegetables, then you can have dessert? Did anyone ever say that to you at the dinner table? Clean up your plate and then you can do something. Did you have someone say to you when you were eating food at their house? No. Yes, yes, yes. No.
Wait. Yes. I
Yes,
remember.
yes, yes, yes. Did you say?
I forgot the question.
The question was, what? Did you ever have someone say to you at mealtime, eat your vegetables and then you can have dessert, go out and play or something like that? You like vegetables?
Yeah.
There you go. The man likes vegetables. There's no struggle at his house, is there? He's going to eat them first. Who else said no? Anybody else? Can you see where the guy likes his vegetables? Who likes vegetables?
I love my vegetables, man.
You people are weird.
Well, I grew up on a farm, so we have like fresh, homegrown.
I grew up on a
vegetables.
farm.
Did you grow your guys' own vegetables?
That's
Yeah.
probably why I don't like them.
It does take a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, but it's
Because my
so
dad
good.
said, boys, it's time for us to go out and take care of the garden.
Yep.
So there's 4 of us. My dad and 3 brothers, my 2 brothers. We go out to the garden to hoe weeds. There's only 3 hoes.
Yep.
And he's standing at the fence with a file saying, come over here, I think yours is a little dull. And he would sharpen it and then send us back out there to work. When my dad said, boys, it's time for us to plant potatoes, he got on a tractor and used a plow to make a furrow. I don't know, it seemed like a quarter of a mile long. It wasn't that long, but I'll tell you how long it was. You take a bucket of potatoes that have been cut with little pieces with an eye showing, and you bend over and you walk down there, and every so often you take like a step and then put one in, take a step and put one in. By the time you get to the end of the row, your back's killing you. And he's up there on the tractor saying, okay, boys, get away. And he drives through there and plows the dirt on that one and cuts in another one and says, fill that one up. We raised enough potatoes. We could have been potato farmers. But he just gave them away to everybody. I think that's why I don't like vegetables. I had to work too hard in a vegetable garden.
They're a lot of work.
Meat and potatoes, and homemade bread. I could live on that. I just wouldn't live very long. So let's decide what behaviors you want from your students and reinforce those behaviors as soon as possible after it occurs. So every time students are doing what you want them to do, reinforce it as quickly as possible. Everybody comes into the room in a timely fashion. The students walk in, and before the bell rings, they're all down in their seats, and you look up and you go, oh, that was pleasant. So what should you say to reinforce that behavior? Thank you for being in your seats before the bell rang. I so appreciate that. It makes my day go better. So some little chipmunk decides, well, I think I'll mess around with Mr. Bonite's day tomorrow. So he comes in the room and he stands there by his chair, waiting for the bell to ring. And then as soon as it rings, he sits down. And I pick up my little pen and I reach over and I look at him and I go, T for tardy. But I sat down when the bell rang. You were supposed to be in your seat before the bell rang. So did you mark me tardy? You were tardy. I marked you tardy. And then I go, D. And he goes, what was that for? I said, you not only were tardy, I was ready to start teaching class and you were disrupting class. And everybody goes, whoa, what's he doing? And I'm keeping records for immediate reinforcement of the behavior I want to see. And I do it verbally for the class. And when this little guy decides he's not going to make me a happy camper, then guess what? I'm not going to make him a happy camper either. I mean, this is a two-way street, guy. You come in here and mess around, and it's going to cost you. The consequences will be less than pleasant. And he'll be the first one to ask me, you keep putting marks by my name. What do you do with those marks? I said, you know, your parents are going to ask me the next time they see me how you're doing in school. And I'll just pull out my cards with your marks on them and tell them this is what he's been doing at school. Now, if I told you that and you were messing around in my class, would you decide that this could get me in trouble? It's time to quit having fun at Mr. Bonine's expense. And hopefully you won't have a little chipmunk like that. But if you have one, what does Barney Fife say? Nip it in the bud. Don't let it go on a long time. Just stop it early. And sometimes I have conversations with little kids after school. I say, you know what? That doesn't bother other people, but it's obviously it bothers me. So in my classroom, learn to do things my way, and you'll be a happier person, and so will I. And the happier we are, the better we get along, and the more successful year we're going to have. And if not, you give me grief, I call your parents and ask them to give you some. It's just that simple. You reap what you sow. Intrinsic and extrinsic reinforcers. Now, I don't know if all the people in the literature would agree with me, because I haven't seen this anywhere, but it's an old farm thing. I talked earlier in this class about priming the pump. I really believe that if I give an extrinsic reinforcer, that after a while, the student enjoys doing that behavior so much that they start to internalize it, and then they start to do it just for the fun of it because it's a satisfying thing. In other words, doing whatever I wanted them to do becomes a pleasant experience in and of itself, and then the experience becomes an intrinsic, an internal reinforcer, where just being in class on time and being in my seat is a pleasant thing to do. I just like being here. The extrinsic is the verbal praise, but I'm going to give a lot of verbal praise for commendations, you could call them. You can call them what you want, but I'm just going to give positive verbal feedback to people who are doing what I expect them to do. What did you enjoy learning when you read chapter 5? Did you find anything enjoyable in chapter 5? Yes or no? Did you find anything enjoyable in chapter 5? Well, I see a card. Yes or no? Yes, 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 yes. Do you want to tell me what you found enjoyable? No. No. Yes, yes, yes. No, 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 no. Well, what did you find enjoyable, Seth?
Well, I feel like right now we're really starting to get into what I always think of when I think of psychology, just like how the brain really works, and how you can not manipulate students, but use it to the advantage.
And you know what? I'm not afraid to use that word. That once I understand how the brain works, I can use that information to mess with somebody's life. But see, the world uses that to manipulate them in a wrong way. What am I using that for? To manipulate them to start living in a way that's pleasing to God. I'm not doing it for my purposes. I'm doing it to enrich their lives. But people don't like that word manipulation, so we stay away from using it and find a more politically correct word. I'm helping you. I'm helping you become all that you are capable of being. All right. So the rest of you don't have to share. See, it's like, now see, if I would have said, if I'd have gone around the room and said, share something that's pleasant that you've learned. What did you enjoy learning something? And all of you said yes. And then would you like to share it? And everyone said no, except Seth. And so I said, okay, you go ahead and share, and the rest of you are exempt because I'm trying to do what? Make sure that the consequences of your behavior are pleasant. I actually have so much stuff to cover, I wouldn't have time to have all of you share something anyway. So thank you for helping me stay on schedule. Use the least elaborate reinforcers that work. Do you know what he means when the author says use the least elaborate reinforcers that work? You know what he means when he says that? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
What?
Use the least elaborate methods that work.
What's the least elaborate? What's the most elaborate reward for behavior I could use? Maybe the word elaborate is the wrong word to use. What would be an elaborate reinforcer?
Taking people to worlds of fun.
What?
Taking people to worlds of fun.
Now that would be an elaborate reinforcer. In the classroom, you guys all want some fruit snacks, don't you?
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, I'm going to bring some fruit snacks in here. I'm not sure when, but you're going to get some fruit snacks. But I think there's something better for you than fruit snacks.
An egg.
So you want vegetables.
Now, one time, Kirsten, just because of people like you who don't care for fruit snacks and like vegetables,
I do love fruit snacks.
I brought, oh, you like it? Okay. Well, I had some people who didn't. I actually brought to a class here at the college some fruit snacks, and then while I was picking them up, I saw those little miniature carrots on sale. So I bought a bag of those little baby carrots, and I had people after class say, thank you for the carrots. And I was surprised how many people ate the carrots instead of the fruit snacks. But I know you like fruit snacks, so I'm going to bring you some. But I'm hoping that when I do that, that I can share something that's a little more costly, which would be a little more elaborate. Worlds of Fun would be the most elaborate, but can you see a little more costly? And that would be some little containers of peach applesauce. Have you ever had?
Yes, I love peach applesauce.
The only place I've ever found it is at Hy-Vee.
I know, it's so good. I love it.
Anybody else have any of the rest of you tasted peach applesauce? Yes or no? Oh. Okay, there's only 3 of us that have tasted it. Are they in for a treat? Are the rest of them in for a treat?
I love
Yeah,
it.
okay. See, maybe this would be a good time to pull out the peach applesauce and the fruit snacks and see which one you choose. Well, we'll see how it goes today while we keep working through this. But you see, the idea is what's he talking about here? Use the least elaborate. Probably it's like, okay, this card is not as elaborate as, a tablet they write on. It's like, and just saying thank you for opening your books, or thank you for reading the material. Just probably saying thank you for doing what I want is probably the least elaborate thing I can do. It's like the more involved it is and the more costly it is, the more elaborate it is. He maybe could have used a word other than elaborate, and it would have connected. It would have helped you understand it a little bit. Page 104, try all possible reinforcement strategies before even thinking of punishment. Do you like that suggestion? Yes or no? 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 Everybody says yes, and Annalise says yes too. Okay. You want to try every possible positive thing before you revert to punishment. And often we live in a world where punishment is the first thing we encounter, when it ought to be the last thing. That there's so many things we ought to be doing. Managing the situation well, being aware of what's going on, showing with-itness. There's all kinds of literature that talks about what you do. I mean, people observe teachers doing something successfully in a classroom. They make notes on what they're doing. And there's all kinds of stuff out there that can help you read through that and figure out what you can do so that you don't have to use punishment as often. Self-reinforcement, praise, attention, grades, recognition, calling their home, starting out, as we said the other day, saying something nice, even asking the parents to work with you. If your child gets all their work done at school, could you give them some kind of reward at home that would encourage them to keep doing their work at school? I mean, I've actually had little kids tell me that I can't do my work here, Mr. Lyon, because my parents expect me to have homework. If I don't have anything at home to work on, I get in trouble. So I have to save my work to take it home and do it there. And I was going, yeah, but if you did it here, I could help you if you're making mistakes. I understand what to do. I just need to do it at home. And I'm thinking, I need to probably make a home visit and talk to those folks about sometimes there's other things he could be working on at home. That would be more enriching if he's that good at math. Privileges, activities, tangible rewards, and food. Food. There, I mentioned it again. Food. What kind of food do I have? Fruit snacks and peach applesauce. Oh no, we can't have food now. Somebody's missing. They would miss out on the peach applesauce. Punishers, page 105. Consequences that weaken behavior. If an unpleasant consequence does not reduce the frequency of a behavior, it's not working. And it shouldn't be called a punisher. In fact, the author says it's not necessarily a punisher. But if an unpleasant consequence doesn't change the behavior, then that consequence isn't working. You're going to have to try something else. Don't just keep pushing it, but try something else. Did you, in the book where he talks about the sit and watch method, some student does something that's inappropriate, so they're told what they did was wrong, and they're told to sit and watch a sand timer. You turn it over and the sand has to run through the timer. Remember reading that in the chapter? If you didn't, I'll just tell you. Okay, see, so somebody does something wrong. I say, now, what you did was wrong. Now, I want you to sit here and think about what you did and why it was wrong, and watch the sand run through this timer. And when the sand is all dropped to the bottom of the timer, then you can get up and go back and do whatever you were doing. Work with the group or go back to your seat. But I want you to sit over here and look at this timer and think about what you were doing. A big part of it is thinking about what you did that made you come over here and do this. And sometimes, some teachers even have the kids, while they're sitting there, in kind of a sand timer timeout thing, they're having them write down, what did I do that was wrong, and why did I do it, and why should I not have done it? So you're getting them to think about what's going on. Now, the question I have is, do you like that idea of using a timer? Yes or no? Yes or no? Well, then it looks like you all better go find egg. Oh no, he doesn't like using that egg timer. What did you put up, Seth? You're not sure. You're maybe both ways. You're saying some yes, some no. Would the rest of you like to know why he doesn't want to use an egg timer?
Do tell.
I mean, going through school, we never did. It was just like, you know, go over there, sit and think, and then the teacher comes back over and then asks you, like, what you did wrong. If you can correctly tell them,
Then you got to go back to your seat. And that was very effective.
Oh, yes.
And because that was so effective, you see why he doesn't care for
Having a
that.
timer gives a definite end to it, which makes the child a lot less repentant, I think, because they're like, I'm gonna get out of this in about so long anyway. I don't have to be sorry.
Oh, yeah, because the teacher would come over if they didn't give the right answer. Cool. You just sit there.
You can sit here
So
no
there's
longer.
more.
Okay.
And see, I used a mixture of the two because I would tell the kids, I would sit them in a separate place and I'd say, okay, you can sit here for 5 minutes. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, I'd come and talk to them and say, okay, so you've sat here for 5 minutes. What did you do that was wrong and why are you sitting here? And if they couldn't answer correctly, I'd say, or they're messing around or whatever, I'd say, okay, well, then I'm going to start the time again and you're going to sit here for another 5 minutes. So I used the timer so that because I had to work
A combination of those two things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, isn't that the beauty of a timer? You say, you know what? If you're not where I want you to be by the time the sand runs out, I'll turn it over and you'll sit here and think about it some more. And probably the one reason I would like some kind of a timer, even if it's one of those things with a little that goes click, 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 and then ding, a bell that rings at the end, because I'm going to get busy teaching and forget about the guy over there and leave him over in the corner for the rest of the day and think, oh no, I forgot about. Oh no, what did I do? So that's kind of why I like some kind of a time notification system, personally. But I see why you're saying, hey, what I saw worked, and I'm going to use something like that. Page 107. Shaping refers to teaching new skills or behaviors by reinforcing approximations of the desired behavior. What are we doing here? What is it I want them to be? I want them to be in their seat when the bell rings. But I have this little guy who, I don't know what he's doing between classes, but he comes running in and just barely gets in his seat before the bell rings. And I want him, okay, he's hurrying to get here, so I want to reward him for that, even if he's not doing exactly what I want. So I say, thank you for trying to get here on time. So I'm going to reward him for close approximations to what I want. I'm teaching math and a person's working a problem and there's 5 steps in the problem and they make a mistake on one of them. How can I reward them? Give them partial credit? My grandkids say, we get partial credit, Poppy, if we get most of it right but make one mistake. I said, well, you better learn to be more accurate than that because when you get to college, it's either you got it right or you missed it. Oh, but wait a minute. You know, I've actually had students say, the thing I like about Dr. Bonan is he gives me hundreds on my homework. Now, does that mean everybody in math got every problem correct on the homework every time they did it? But if they're doing their best and they're turning it in, I still give them 100 on their homework instead of saying, no, you missed 2 problems out of 20, so you get a 90 instead of 100 on your homework. You follow me? So they're close, but I'm giving them credit for it. Why would you do that? Well, I'll tell you why I do that. Can you imagine grading homework on a detailed basis every day for every student in every math paper? And I discovered one time that I could do the detailed grading, or I could just kind of give them a 10 or an 8 or a 7, depending on how well they followed my instructions. And at the end of the grading term, the grade came out the same. So I can give them credit for close approximations and still end up with about the same kind of grade when I'm finished. And by rewarding them for what they're doing, it encourages them to keep working at it and doing their homework, because math homework is not any fun for a lot of people. So extinction is what happens when reinforcers are withdrawn and the behavior ultimately disappears. I stop giving rewards and they stop doing what I was rewarding them for. Well, sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes the behavior was such a valuable thing, a valuable skill for them to acquire, that they start doing it intrinsically. You follow me? They don't need a reward. I had people say to me when I didn't, my wife just wanted her girls to be helpful, and she would say, "Girls, do you want to help me clean the table after dinner?" What would you say if your mother asked you that? What would you say if your mother asked you that?
I didn't have some sassy response.
What? Hold up a card. What would you say if your mother asked you that? Yes, Annalie says. Yes and yes. These people down here are saying no, and these three people are saying yes. So what do you call those people? A bunch of goody three shoes over there?
I call people don't want to get spanked.
What? What'd you say, Sam?
We got spanked.
Right? Yeah. Learn from a young age. You said no, you're gonna be in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
So
Because when your mother said, "Would you like to help clean the table?" it wasn't a yes or no question.
Shoot, there was fear when I was a teenager. Like,
if I go home right now and I said no,
still yes.
It's
they,
like-
they go back to college.
Yeah, that's
Don't come home.
And see, that's what my wife expected too. And the girls would say, "No, I don't want to, Mom." And I say, "Girls, get in there and help your mother clean the table for her and help her do the dishes. What's your problem?" They said, "Well, she asked me if I wanted to help." I said, "Well, she didn't really mean that literally to give you a yes or no choice. She was just letting you be nice about it." "Oh, I'm going, but I don't know nice. Get in there and do the dishes and clean the table." And so I said, "Nina, let's make a chart of all the things you want these girls to do every day. And then every time they do it, we put a check mark on it. At the end of the week, I give them money based on how many check marks they have." And she said, "Well, if you think that'll help," and I said, "Well, let's try it and see what happens." And it did help. And we had some friends who said, "You know what the problem with that is? That your girls are going to expect to be paid for everything they do." Well, it wasn't like everything they did was on the list. The things that were most important to Nina, she would put those on the list. And then those were the things that they had to, and there was other stuff, they just did it because what? It was just something you do. And then she could switch things on the list based on what bothered her from the last week, and she didn't have to nag them about it for the next week. And eventually, when they got old enough to start babysitting and earning money, doing things for other people, guess what our daughter said? "Dad, I don't think I need to be paid for this stuff anymore. I have a job where I earn money. I'm what? Learning to be, I can handle this." And I would say they handled most things quite well. The one thing that bothered their mother was how messy their rooms would be sometimes. But see, that bothers her when she looks at my room too. So I said, "Girls, just keep the door closed so she doesn't have to see it. It just bothers her." I just have to find a place to throw things so it won't bother her so much that I get in trouble. One way to avoid extinction is to have a schedule for reinforcement, and that's on page 108. Which all those schedules, I mean, they get pretty technical about it, but the idea is that maybe you'll reinforce something once in a while just to make sure it doesn't go extinct. But my theory is, if a behavior has to be reinforced all the time to keep it going, it probably isn't what? An essential behavior in life. If I'm using these techniques to teach them life skills that are valuable, they'll eventually see the value of the life skill and they'll start to do it on their own.
And one thing you could do to avoid extinction is you can randomly reinforce things.
Yes,
like
you
if you're
can.
trying to get kids to sit in their seat, then, you know, if one day 10 kids sit in their seat on time, then you give each of them a quarter
That's
or whatever,
exactly right.
whatever the
Let's-
prize
you
is.
can
and then,
you can pick something that's valuable and say, okay, I quit checking this every day, but you know, some of you are getting a little lax in your behavior, and here are the people who were on time today, and you won't know when I'm going to do it and when I'm not. And that's an excellent technique to use. Okay, page 110 talks about we've seen that consequences strongly influence behavior, but the stimuli that precede a behavior also play an important role. So what happens before has a lot to do with something. The consequences of their behavior, if it's pleasant or unpleasant, but what happened before, like what? The consequences of not doing what I want you to do is I'll write your name down or put a note by your name on my roster for the day. But if I'm in class and I'm sitting here and saying, okay, it's getting a little noisy in here, that's the cue that says I'm going to write somebody up for talking. And if you don't figure it out, when I pull my pencil out, and this has actually happened, and so somebody's talking to their friend, and their friend saw me pull my pencil out, and the friend is trying not to listen to him because someone's going to get written down, and they don't want to be the one to get written, and the talker is completely ignoring it. And so I just write them down. But see, cues. Do I have cues for what's going on? I give verbal cues and visual cues as to what's happening. And that's what he's talking about here. Think about what you're doing in advance to help them pick up on what's going to happen next. Page 111 talks about generalization, transferring a learned behavior to a new situation. If I teach the kids in my classroom to say, may I, please, and thank you, will some of them, when they get together at a family gathering somewhere and someone gives them something, will they be tempted to say, may I, please, or thank you? And here's what's cool about that. Then when they say, where did your child learn to talk that way, to be so polite? Oh, they go to school with this teacher who's got a big thing about being polite. And then the grandmother or the aunt or the uncle says, well, I think that's just beautiful. I wish every teacher did something like that. And how does this little kid feel who's picked up this skill that they've carried someplace else? And all of a sudden, they get rewarded for it there. And I think we ought to encourage kids that the stuff we teach them at school, they ought to learn to take it home, to take it to church, to take it other places in their life. Social learning theory on page 112 says what? You observe what other people are doing. You watch what they're doing. You retain what you saw happen, and you reproduce it in your own life. Or you watch what they're doing. You saw what happened to them, and you say, I'm not going there. When my brother ran away from home, we were little because he got mad about something. He runs down the pasture, and he's sitting on the hill, and it's getting late. And he's just sitting out there, and pretty soon he comes up to the house, and my dad's waiting at the fence, and he crosses the fence, and my dad gives him a couple of swats, and when he got down, I go, why did you come back? He said, I'm not hungry. And I remember thinking, if you're going to run away from home, be sure and pack a lunch. Because when you come back, they're going to whack you. You're going to get some slots from not doing what you should. I learned a lot from watching my older brother get in trouble and said, just don't do that. But you can learn a lot from watching people do the right thing too. Page 113 talks about vicarious learning. That's learning from watching what happens to other people. Page 114 is self-regulated learning. Observing your own behavior and judging it against your own standards. And reinforcing. Have you ever reinforced a behavior, or have you ever punished yourself for not doing something or doing something?
Yep.
Have you? I don't like mowing grass. Never have. People in the city mow their grass way too often. You ought to let it grow tall enough so you can mow it and bale it and sell it. That's my farm upbringing. But my wife would say, Tom, did you notice the neighbors mowed their grass? And wouldn't you know, I live next door to a guy who does landscaping for a living. He runs his mower about every 2 days. Wears me out. I said to Nina, if it really looks that bad, ask the neighbor if he wants to run his mower over here and mow ours too. She goes, no, Tom, you have to get out there and mow it. And that used to bother me so much mowing grass. I would say, I'll go mow the grass if you'll fix me a pitcher of lemonade, and then I can't drink the lemonade till the grass is mowed. So I got a reward. And if I do something that I shouldn't do, then I say, Tom, you have to be punished. And I punish myself for doing it. I took my wife to the Grand Canyon late at night. Have you been to the Grand Canyon? It's breathtaking. The sun's going down and it's changing, and I'm going, whoa, this is amazing. And Nina's in the car and she goes, Tom, I need to go to the bathroom. I said, there's a bathroom right there. I'm just going to run down here and watch the sun go down, and I'll be right back. And I'm running down the path where the sun is just dropping and the colors are changing, and I keep going, and it keeps going down, and I keep going, because that's a huge canyon. And I'm running down this path. I come back and it's dark, because I'd walked so far, actually ran so far watching it, that by the time I got back it was dark. And she's standing there shivering, and I'm going, what's wrong? And she goes, the bathroom's locked. And you locked the car when you left. And I've been standing here waiting for you to come back. Where have you been? I said, watching the sun go down the Grand Canyon. She goes, I watched it go down. It's dark. I said, well, I kept running down the road to watch some more of it. Oh, I said, we better go in that restaurant and order something to eat so you can use their restaurant. I am so sorry. She goes, yes, you are. And we got in the car, and I said, this thing is amazing. Let's drive over to the other side and see what it looks like on the north side of the Grand Canyon. So we left that night. How long would it take to drive around the Grand Canyon if it's only, what, a couple miles wide? Or how many miles wide it is? If it's 5 miles wide, it won't take that long.
I think it's like
It
5
took all
hours.
night to drive up to where we could find a place to go around it and come back down the other side. And we got to the other side when the sun came up in the morning. And I run out to Angel Point and start watching the sun come up on the Grand Canyon. I'm just standing there. I'm there so long, Nina thought I fell over the rail. And it disappeared, and she hadn't had a good night's sleep, and she was hungry. And I'm enamored with this goofy Grand Canyon. And I came back, and she goes, what have you been doing? I said, watching the sun come up on the Grand Canyon. It's amazing. She goes, I saw it. I was looking out the window of the car. No, you didn't see what I saw. She said, have you seen enough? And I said, I'm thinking I'm going to go back to the other side and watch the sun come up on the south side tomorrow. And by the time I got around to the other side, I said, Tommy, you have been a bad boy. And you cannot stay here and watch the sun come up. You must drive all night back to Las Vegas and get a hotel. So when the sun comes up, you can say to your wife, we're back at the hotel where you can have a hot bath and a bed to sleep in and sleep as long as you want. And she'll say, I thought you were going to watch the sun come up. I said, I was, but I was a bad boy and I had to be punished. Sometimes we just have to do that to ourselves, don't we? Well, that's enough of chapter 5. Well, it looks like we had time for a treat. Oh, I'll have to save one. Oh, while we're doing that, is this? What is this? These are some suggestions. Let's see. Here's one for you, and one for you, and then here's one for you, and one for you, and then here's one for you, and one for you, and then I have one more here, one for you, and one for you. So while I'm getting the snacks out, you guys look those over. And what is it talking about? What is that handout talking about? Oh, it doesn't tell you. Mine's the one that tells you. 10 tricks for capturing your students' attention. 10 tricks for capturing your students' attention. How to capture and hold the attention of easily distracted students. Let's see. What do I have? Now, you know, okay, don't open these. Just read on the back what's in this package. You can look at the front of it, but read on the back what's in that package. Before you think about reading it, I want you to read it.
That's okay.
You like raspberry?
And then,
Oh my goodness.
Oh, boy.
Hannah missed out.
Apple sauce from.
You want me to, here, I can hand out the spoon.
Yeah, good. So you read. The rest of you who haven't tried it, you'll have to try this peach applesauce. Those of you who have tried it, you know how good it is.
Thank you.
But before you open those fruit snacks, I want you to read what it says on there and ask yourself, do I really want to eat that? I probably should have turned the camera off before we did this.
Oh, you did.
We finish this chapter. On Monday, we'll start the next chapter.